all my regional MMA heads. This is Dylan Knostman back with episode 5 of the regional Roundup. And this week we're going to be doing things just a little bit differently. I obviously missed a week. I'm in training camp myself for a fight. So, stuff comes up. Couldn't quite get to recording last week. But this week we're going to be talking all the MMA, both past and future. Moving forward, I think I'm going to be talking a little bit less just about past events, and I'm going to be more focusing on, what happened the previous weekend, but also what to look forward to in the coming week. I had a nice thread this week on Twitter at DSK MMA. Really kind of highlighted, other promotions to watch outside the UFC, particularly with the lawsuit news and all that stuff falling through, which is pretty unfortunate for the UFC. So it's good to support your other regional promotions, particularly non-UFC affiliated promotions. We're going to be previewing. I'll let you know where to watch these cards, how to, tune in and check out these regional prospects and, other promotions. But let's jump right into it. So I'm going to start with last weekend because there's a couple fights I want to talk about from the weekend of March 16th. We started in Mexico with Lux 41. This was Lux is a Mexican promotion. I've talked about them before. They hold pretty cool events, in my opinion. They have a very nice color scheme, black and gold. It's very slick. And the two fights that were really big for me is, performers, I should say, Yvonne Cotto in the, first fight of the main card against Victoria Alba, who was a previous champion of theirs. I think their inaugural 125-pound champion. And Yvonne Cotto just put on an absolute masterclass. I mean, she had amazing pace through 3 rounds. She was landing with all of her weapons, kicks, knees, punches, elbows. She did good cage wrestling. She was cutting the cage, which is incredibly impressive for a prospect of, now 2-0 to be doing. And definitely a female prospect at 125 to watch out of Mexico. Give her a follow, Yvonne C, on Instagram. And then the other main fight to focus on was Jorge Calvo Martin from Costa Rica. Actually, one of the few fighters doing big things out of there, taking on Kike Gonzalez, who is the one of Lux's main Mexican stars. He just tattooed, very handsome, tough guy, and he was taking on Calvo Martin for the 125-pound title, flyweight, and this was an absolute war. I mean, it was one of the bloodiest fights I've ever seen by the end of it. There were several times through the first couple rounds I thought Jorge Calvo Martin was going to be TKO'd or doctor stoppage and vice versa for Kike Hernandez, yet they both battled through and Jorge Calvo Martin ended up coming out on top with his second defense of the flyweight title. He is now 12-4 on his career, so really keep an eye out for him. He's a little bit on the older end. He's in his 30s already, but he is definitely skilled and tough flyweight. Moving on to the other big events that happened that weekend of the 16th and 17th was Cage Warriors 167 and 168. Cage Warriors does this interesting thing where they'll hold Cage Warriors Unplugged cards, which I guess is the equivalent of like the UFC Apex, except they only do it on rare occasions and have invite-only tickets, and therefore it becomes a cool, exclusive event. That happened on Friday. It was a little bit of a weird card. You had Mom's Basement friend Scotty Stockman versus Stefan Paterno in the main event. And then a couple of the good fights down the card. We had Anthony Orozco on there. He won really tough decision against a Brazilian fighter. And excuse me. So Scotty Stockman won a really tough decision on the prelims, actually, against Lucas Rodriguez, who's a Brazilian fighter who they flew in to fight Anthony after Anthony's fight fell through on Cage Warriors 166 in San Diego. So he moved up to 3-0. Really impressive. I mean, he's once again one of the top prospects now in the world, not even just in the United States, now that he's going overseas. So keep an eye on him. Michelle Martioni he had a really, really good performance against the Israeli Roz Bring. He moves to 9-2, one of Italy's top flyweight prospects. O'Meal Brown made his return on this card, which he suffered a really, really shocking defeat to Giannis Bashar, who actually is on the Ultimate Fighter this season coming up in his last fight. And he, back in the win column, defeated Rafael Aronov, who's a tough guy, obviously interviewed here on Mom's Basement as well. And then the main event, Stefano Paterno versus Scotty Stockman. I believe it was my first episode in which I talked about Scotty's main event for Battlefield Fight League up in Canada. Really pretty tough showing. Got submitted in the first round after really not having much of a game plan on the feet. And unfortunately, it was more of the same this time. Paterno is a great grappler. I mean, he was 16-4-1 going into this fight, the number one ranked pound-for-pound fighter in Italy. And he just kind of weathered the early storm from Scotty and caught him with a Darce choke first round. And Stefano Paterno moves to 17-4-1. Really impressive fighter. I would love to see him at a high level soon, one of the big promotions. But yeah, he just continues his Cage Warriors success. Moving on to Cage Warriors 168, which took place the next day, and this actually occurred in Manchester. So this was in person, large crowd, about 4,000 people there. And this card was one of Cage Warriors' best they've had in a while. This featured a lot of their stars. Interestingly enough, the featured prelim, they said prelim leading up to it, but it ended up leading the main card, I believe, was Liam Gittins versus Roberto Hernandez, which this has been a long hyped fight for Cage Warriors. A lot of shit talk between these two guys. Liam Gittins, he defeated Rhys McEwen in his last fight, really, really skilled Scottish fighter. And he was looking to kind of secure himself, make his first defense against the American Roberto Hernandez, who's beat some really impressive fighters. He beat former UFC fighter Trevin Jones, which Trevin Jones will not stop DMing him on Instagram saying how he actually didn't win that fight, which is a whole different bag of worms. But Liam absolutely dominated Roberto Hernandez. I mean, he beat him up for 5 rounds and then submitted him with about 3 minutes left in the fight at the end. And he, every aspect of the game, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, striking, on the feet, he was just piecing him up with combinations, had him on the back foot, really made Roberto Hernandez not look like himself. And Roberto did come out and say afterwards that he is no longer cutting to 135. He's sticking to featherweight. It was too much on his body, which I think is perfectly reasonable. But you can't discredit Liam Gittins' performance because it was just masterful. And he's another guy I'd love to see at the next level. I think similar to James Hendon, who's another Cage Warriors prospect, recently signed. I would love to see Liam Gittins fight in Oktagon. It's my favorite promotion right now, and they're doing really good things. So maybe we'll see him in the Czech promotion soon. A couple of the notable fights on this card. We had Luke Riley coming back against John DeJesus, who's probably one of the toughest regional guys out there, especially at 145. Luke Riley, just, again, use this word a little bit often, but masterclass by Luke Riley. He outstruck DeJesus, who's notoriously slick and hard to hit. He bloodied him, he beat him, and Luke Riley, 9-0 now. Obviously no issues since that absolute barn burner with Alexander Loof. And he's another guy who's really, his only way is up, and he needs to be signed to the next level sooner rather than later. In the main event, Andy Clamp, light heavyweight out of England, longtime Cage Warriors fighter, moved to 13-2 with a win, knockout over Matthew Byfield. So he is the new Cage Warriors light heavyweight champ. So once again, look for him to get a shot soon at a bigger promotion. And that about wraps up that weekend. But this past weekend, we had a decent little run of fights as well. So starting with LFA Brazil went down on Saturday, which I unfortunately did not get around to watching this card. I was watching the Oktagon card, but I heard it was absolutely insane. LFA always puts on tremendous Brazilian cards, considering just the sheer amount of talent in that region and how many good fighters they can get, to fill up any card. But the big one I want to talk about is Oktagon 55. This took place in Stuttgart, Germany. This was the This took place in Stuttgart, Germany, with the main event featuring Christian Youngworth versus Robert Pukac. who they have fought once before. Pukac quit on the stool out of frustration in between the second and third rounds in their first fight, which was pretty wild to watch. But this card is actually absolutely filled with action. As I've said many times, Oktagon's probably my favorite promotion running right now. They just always put on an absolutely electric and energetic show. The fights are great, and they're really signing some big prospects and have some good homegrown stars there too. But prelim, really impressive result. Jacinta Austin out of Australia defeated Karolina Wojcik, who is the former Invicta 115-pound champ. And she opened a cut the size of the Grand Canyon on this girl's forehead. I mean, it was just sickly. You can look up Wojcik, Wojcik, and you'll see the picture. Ion Tabersunau, he out of Moldova, he defeated Nenad Aramovic out of by knockout in the second round. Lucia Sabova, this was probably one of the most impressive fights of the night for me. She took on Rosa Gumiena, which Gumiena is a former kickboxer and Muay Thai fighter. And Lucia Sabova had not fought in over 3 years, I believe. And she was coming back after having a child. And she looked just fantastic. She ended up winning by armbar with about 30 seconds left in the fight. She just put on a masterclass of grappling. It was really just impressive transitionary grappling. You know, she was always ahead in the positions, transitioning before Gumiena could catch up. And she moved to 7-0. Probably one of the better women's bantamweights out there available. So I really hope to see her get a big opportunity soon. Or actually, I hope her to stay with Oktagon, because I truly believe Oktagon is a place where some fighters can start to develop some really good careers. Next fight up, we had Michael Diegaszek taking on Nikolaus Serbazis, which this was a fast and furious fight, 58 seconds in, just all action. And Diegaszek out of Germany, he won by left hook knockout. Super impressive. Fight I was looking forward to that didn't quite live up to expectations was Jorik Montagnac versus Sebastian Hale. Montagnac's an absolute tank, big French guy at light heavyweight, and he's got some knockouts. He was coming off of a knockout loss a couple fights ago. It was really pretty insane. He was winning the fight, just got caught, but he decisioned his way to a victory. Going up the card, another really impressive performance for me was Arjan Topalaj. He defeated Cairo Resavi by left hook in the first round. He kind of got caught a little bit, turned the tides, and then just absolutely demolished this guy. And he moves to 7-0-1, Oktagon staple out of Algeria. He's really another really good fighter to watch. And then moving up the card again, we had Nicholas Stolze, former UFC fighter, taking on Matej Kurtej. And this was a shock because Nicholas Stolze, obviously the fighter or the favorite coming in, UFC experience. He's fought some really tough guys, including like Benoit Saint-Denis. And Matej Kurtej submitted him in the second round with no hooks in from the back. Choked him out. It was really impressive. He weathered the storm, got hurt a little bit, came back and submitted him. Co-main event, Jeremy Kimball versus Alexander Popek. Jeremy Grizzly Kimball, former UFC fighter, attempted to make the cut down to light heavyweight, could not come anywhere near the limit. Ironside, Alexander Popek, he agreed to kind of let Kimball have a weight limit as opposed to have to, like, he could weigh up to 250 pounds as opposed to cutting down to a limit. And he absolutely demolished him, just thoroughly on the feet, on the ground, beat him up. And then the main event, which I was speaking of, Christian Youngworth versus Robert Pukac, was actually a great fight. Went all 5 rounds, unanimous decision for Youngworth, 2-0 in the series, and got to win in front of his German fans. A really impressive thing about Youngworth is he did not start training MMA until he was 29 years old, and he's now in his late 30s, but he's one of Germany's biggest stars, and he is a really cool story and fun fighter to watch. Really aggressive and just constant pressure on the feet, walking people down. And the big news that came out of this event was Oktagon will be going back to Germany on October 12th to host an event in Deutsche Bank Stadium, which is a soccer stadium of 55,000 seats. So they're going to be hosting one of the largest events in MMA history. We'll see if it sells out. I really hope it does. As I've said probably 4 times already, Oktagon is truly one of my favorite promotions. and they're doing really, really big things. Keep an eye out for the next event on April 20th, Oktagon 56, and it's taking place in Birmingham. We have fighters like Shamrock, James Hendon, a bunch of other exciting guys, so that's going to be a really fun one. The other notable event that happened this weekend, well, kind of notable, was Fury FC 88 in Texas. A couple good fighters on this card. Freddie Rodriguez, really impressive flyweight. He just dogged his way to a win against Eddie Friday. And then Adam Vigil in the co-main, one of, if not perhaps the most roided guy on the regional scene. He won a unanimous decision. And then in the main event, what everybody thought would be a banger between Zach the Dragon Borrego and Jordan the Beverly Hills Ninja Wright, former UFC fighter, ended up being one of the most boring fights maybe I've ever watched. I mean, Jordan Wright, formerly known as a Killer Be Killed fighter, coming in off his UFC stint and just laid and prayed for 5 rounds. I think he had 20 minutes plus of control time, and it was ridiculous. The announcers were pissed. Alex Morono said he's like, well, would show the highlights from that fight if there were any. So that about tells the story there. And that about recaps the action. But as I said, this week, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's to come this next week. We have a really good weekend of regional MMA. Starting off in Russia, we have ACA 173. I can't say I know much about any of these guys, but I know that this is a very, very good card. It's taking place in Belarus. We do have some familiar names. We have Tony Johnson Jr., who is a noted American heavyweight who's been fighting in Russia for the last, 5-6 years. I mean, he's kind of been a staple for ACA, one of the only Americans there. He's taken on Carlos Felipe, former UFC fighter, and that's the co-main event, so that's going to be interesting. A lot of good Belarusian fighters on this card. And then another big event coming up, we have LFA one. Oh, excuse me. You can watch ACA on their website generally. Absolute Championship Akhmat should be taking place on Thursday or Friday. They're usually at weird times, so check morning time. But moving on, we have LFA 180, which is taking place in Kentucky, which is interesting. I don't know if they've ever been there before, but this is one of the better LFA cards I've seen in a while. They got a lot of well-known names. Starting at the bottom, we got Nejra Rep, who is me and Tyler spoke about her when she took on Shannon Clark, who is now the 125-pound champion for Invicta, which is really impressive. So she's coming back against Whitney Piles, who's 4-6. So look for her to get it done. Looking to hype her a little bit. We got Alondra Rosales or Alondra Brown. Really strong grappler. Lost her last fight, but she's fought for LFA and has been really impressive. We got Big Tuna, Ben Parrish, my boy, coming back fighting Alec Lorenz, who's a very, very tough fighter. He was supposed to fight in Arizona a couple months ago, but he didn't end up getting on that card. We have Victor Valenzuela, who's an interesting prospect. He's coming off, he's 10-3. He's from Chile, and he's coming off a stint with Combate Global, who he actually beat some pretty impressive fighters all by finish. 3-fight win streak. He's taken on Dustin Parrish. Don't know if he has any relation to Ben, but we have Kibede Gordon, who is a Israeli Muay Thai national champion. Not sure what their Muay Thai scene's like out there, but impressive nonetheless. We have Landry Ward making his return. He's a really impressive LFA prospect at 8-2. He's headlined for them before. Really, really tough guy out of Texas, I believe. And then in the co-main event, we got Keegan, the Violent Hippie Agnew, taking on Richie Miranda, which is a really, really exciting fight. Keegan Agnew's got 4 finishes. Richie Miranda is another LFA staple, really exciting. But the main event is what I'm most excited for. Kevin Fernandez, friend of the channel, really little dragon, really high-level fighter out of Texas, but he's taken on my personal boy, Igor Cicada. He fights out of Brazil, out of the Pitbull's brother team, and he is incredibly skilled on the ground. Just got his black belt recently. He's a good striker. He's really kind of one of those. He almost kind of reminds me of Alexandre Pantoja, but early in his career. He's 9-2 right now. He's had some really good success in the Brazilian regional scene. Actually got a title shot in his last fight in the LFA flyweight division, but unfortunately came up short there. But this is going to be his first fight since then, getting another main event slot. So they obviously see a lot in this kid, and I can confirm he's really, really talented, and this is a main event you do not want to miss. Moving on to another Cage Warriors event. These guys are staying active. I love it. Cage Warriors, one of my favorite promotions as well. You can always watch them on Fight Pass. Main event of this one's going to be Jordan, the Epidemic Vucenic, taking on Simone de Anna. Simone de Anna is one of the top 145ers out of Italy. Cage Warriors obviously been doing a lot of work over in Italy. They have their Cage Warriors Academy there. They hold events in Rome, so they're really starting to push a lot of Italian fighters. But Vucenic is one of the highest level fighters in the regional scene at any weight class. Should have been in the UFC probably 2 or 3 fights ago, but here he is defending his title. Actually, no, he's not. This is not a title fight. Excuse me, my mistake. Regular main event, but if he doesn't get signed after this win, I mean, I don't know what these promotions are doing. Oktagon, once again, get on it. Sign Jordan Vucenic. Co-main event is one of the most exciting fights that Cage Warriors could put together. You could probably put together in almost any promotion. We have Loner Kavanagh taking on Sean Da Silva. Sean Da Silva is a Brazilian fighting out of Germany. He's El Vato Loco, I believe his nickname is. He's just so much fun. He's got a ton of energy, ton of aura and persona, and he's an absolutely electric striker and good grappler as well. And if you're a Cage Warriors fan, you know Loner Kavanagh. I almost think of him like Luke Riley Jr., just crazy, high-paced, explosive striker on the feet, insane chin. I mean, the dude can do it all. Really, really, really excited for this fight. Got Will the Dragon Curry returning against Leon Aliu, another Italian prospect. I think Will Curry has the better strength of schedule. I think he's really the fighter to watch in this matchup. But once again, Italy's putting out some good fighters these days, so you never know. Darren Stewart taking on the 39-12-1 Carlos Pereira. And then down the card, we got Tom Creasy fighting, who is the younger brother of Sam Creasy, former title challenger for Cage Warriors at 125, taking out Amir Malekpour, who's a solid Swedish fighter. We have Tariq Pell, who's exciting. He's 3-0, won by 22-second knockout his last time out, and he is a Cage Warriors Academy amateur champion as well. He's taken on Sean Frazier, who's 1-0 out of England as well. Unfortunately, we previously were supposed to have Mateusz Figlak on this card, James Webb, George Hardwick supposed to be on this card, so it's lost a little bit of its shine, but it's still a really, really good event. And then also going down this next weekend, we got Uriah Faber's A1 Combat going down in Wheatland, California. Used to play baseball out there for some events, oddly enough. I'm not too familiar with any of these guys, but they have 3 title fights going down. Kevin Felipe versus Jason Butcher for the 185 championship. Namiki Kawahara versus Anthony Doe for the strawweight championship. And Ernie Juarez versus Adabi Kaldar for the 145 championship. So A1 Combat doing some good stuff. Check them out on Fight Pass. And then the last card to talk about, which this was a really exciting one. If any of you are interested, if any of you guys are interested, I actually host a podcast as well. It's called Cagecraft Podcast. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, with a couple of my other buddies in the MMA media space. And we this week had Cage Titans president Mike Polvier on, which is a super awesome conversation, just talking about the business side of MMA, what hosting is like, what promoting is like, his path to owning and running a successful promotion, and also just talking about Cage Titans 64, which is happening this Saturday in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Cage Titans is a really unique promotion. They're super, super loyal to their region. Coop's Bar and Grill is a Cage Titans almost themed bar. It's where the headquarters are. They do a lot of their podcasting and weigh-ins there and stuff. It takes place at Plymouth Memorial Hall, which is a super historical building there. And they're on their 64th event, so it just goes to show they're doing something really good there. Main event, Everett Disselets versus Jonathan Piersma. I mean, this is just a top-level regional fight. 7-2 for Piersma, 3-0 for Disselets. Both fighting, coming off one fight with Cage Titans, both coming off wins, and this is going to be for the welterweight title. Peter Barrett, one of the stars of Cage Titans, he's coming back fighting Tom Santos. We've got Jay Perrin versus Chris Makate. Jay Perrin, former UFC fighter. Chris Makate, I've seen him fight twice live for the UFL. Super impressive 145er as well, really good wrestler. And then we got Johnny Cupcakes Campbell coming back, who's one of the most exciting and probably fun regional veterans out there. He's fought for Cage Warriors. He's fought for Cage Titans. Just about every East Coast regional promotion you could think of. He's taken on Jay Presley. So yeah, give Cage Titans a look. Buy their pay-per-view. I love supporting local promoters and really helping grow the regional scene. So make sure to tune in for that. And yeah, so we got a good week of MMA coming up. If I had to highlight one fight, just one single fight for you to watch this weekend, I would have to say it's probably Loner Kavanagh versus Sean Da Silva. That's my official fight of the week. Check it out. Cage Warriors on Friday on UFC Fight Pass. And by the way, the Cage Titans 64, you can find it at spectationsports.com or on the Cage Titans website. That's usually where they'll have the link for the pay-per-view. But yeah, good stuff. A lot of good MMA. Follow me at DSK MMA on Twitter. Check out my regional thread, a regional MMA thread. Follow me at DSK Combat Sports on Instagram. I will be fighting soon as well. Fingers crossed, just waiting on the opponent. So once that news is dropped, I hope you all tune into the pay-per-view to check me out as I whoop some ass. So have a good week, catch the fights, and we will chat next time. Peace.